Keely, you've been singing since 6 years old? Around the house?
In the bed mainly.
Really?
Actually, the first time that my mother woke me up, I was standing up in the middle of the bed. I slept with her, singing at the top of my lungs.
Wow.
And I was about 6 years old then.
Did your mom and dad sing?
No. My dad was a carpenter. My mother played the piano in the church, but she never sang.
Huh. And in 1947, you and your family go to Atlantic City.
Yes.
And you see this fellow, Louis Prima.
Right.
Did you know him before you saw him?
I never even heard of him.
Really?
No, no. And my brother Pig and I were real jitterbug nuts. And we were looking forward to going to the Steel Pier to see the big band, and there's this big sign up, Louis Prima. And I looked at my brother and I said, well, who in the world is that? So we went out there to see who it was, and my mom and dad went with us everywhere. And I had a little brother in those days. He was about 4 years old. Huh. And we went out there, and at one end of the ballroom is this bandstand with this band and about 200 people standing around it. And in the back of the ballroom, the people were actually dancing. And I thought, well, what in the world's going on up there on that stage, right? So I took my little brother in my arms, because it always got me to the front of the bus or the front of everything, right? And I got up there, and I standing there, and I see this man, and I thought, my goodness, where did he come from? He was wonderful. You couldn't take your eyes off of him. And he had a group within the orchestra called the Goofers, and they were doing Italian comedy. And they were absolutely wonderful. He had a singer named Kathy Allen. She was wonderful. I mean, I never danced. I stood there the whole time watching the show. That's how good he was.
Wow. And then later he comes to your neck of the woods.
Actually, we went back to Virginia. As you know, I was born and raised in Norfolk. And we have a beautiful beach area called Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Sure.
And there was a club down there called the Surf Club. And each week, the owner, Mr. Kane, would bring in a different big band. And we went to Mr. Kane and told him, you've got to bring in Louis Prima next summer. He said, who is Louis Prima? And again, it's in our neck of the woods. We just never heard of him or his recordings. And luckily for us, Mr. Kane listened to us. And we told him, we said, if you bring him in, we'll pack this place for you on his opening night. Mr. Prima will pack it the rest of the time. And he brought him in, and sure enough, opening night, you couldn't move in there. And Louis was so great. And he packed the place the rest of the time.
And you soon join his band. He hires you at 20?
I joined him. He opened on a Friday. I joined him on a Sunday. I went up and sang a couple of songs for him on Sunday. He was looking for a singer. I went to work with him that night. The only thing I had to wear was my prom high school dress. But what Louis didn't know, which was so good for me, is that after I had seen him in Atlantic City, when I went home to Virginia, I bought every Louis Prima record I could find. And I knew all of the vocals. I knew the entrances, the endings, and the whole thing, so they really didn't have to teach me hardly anything.
Wow.
And I left with him the following Thursday.
Now this act was something. I mean, the two of you. You had the sort of deadpan...
But not in those days. In those days, I was just a band singer.
So he would just bring you on for
And
parts.
Louis always worked with a girl. He always played off of a female singer.
Right.
And he used to like really tall, he had one called Florida Keys, and she was tall, black-haired. And all of his singers, he wanted to be black-haired too. And so the girl singer was important to Louis because, like I said, he worked off of her. But in the days of the big band, I would sit in the chair.
Right.
And then I'd get up and I'd do my song, or I'd do a duet with him or whatever, and I'd still go back and sit in the chair.
Right.
Then after the big band died down and there was no more work for the big band, he and I went out, just the two of us, in a duo. And naturally, I became more important to him as it went along because he only had me. There was nobody else for him to work off of.
But this chemistry was unbelievable because it was, he would jump around and just be madcap, out of control, maniacal at times. And you just stood there, placid as could be, at times bored.
I was. I really was. You know, it's funny because if you look back at some of the old tapes, especially the Ed Sullivan things,
right, that's
I used to laugh a lot. Nobody ever saw me laugh. And when we went to the Sahara is really when the deadpan thing happened. And it was an accident. It wasn't something that was planned. It wasn't something that I think I could have done if I tried to do it intentionally. And it was, we worked from midnight till 6 in the morning. We did 5 shows a night.
Wow.
And the first half hour of each show, I had nothing to do but to stand there. And I wasn't a hand clapper, I wasn't a finger snapper. And we had a very small stage. And I stood in front of the upright piano, and I would cross my arms in front of my chest like this. I'd lean up against the piano, and I'd stand there for a half hour. But in the Sahara Lounge, I could see people coming in the main front door. I could see them coming in and out of the main showroom. I could see them coming in and out of the side door. And I was so busy doing what I call being nosy, watching everything and everybody, that when Louis would come over and pull on my skirt, he really was interrupting my chain of my thought, you know. And I would look at him like, leave me alone. You know, what are you doing here? And it turned into something wonderful.
Wow. What was the source of that chemistry? Because he never could recapture that without you.
No. No, he couldn't. I truly believe it was the fact that we loved each other and we were married. And we could get away with things on stage being married. Another thing I think was very important, which I still dress like it today, any gown I wear on stage, any girl can go buy in a store. I don't wear very, very expensive clothes. I always used to think that we belonged to the people.
Yeah.
Everybody in town, we belong to the people. And I really think that's what our success was.
What did you learn from him as a performer?
I learned a lot. I learned pacing of a show. Never do an encore. I don't ever do an encore.
Wow. Why wouldn't he do encores?
He said that once you walk off the stage, leave them wanting more. Don't ever go back and overdo, and don't ever milk an audience. You've seen many performers say, do you want one more? Or they'll run off and they'll kind of look and, one more. And he said, don't ever do anything like that, you know. And, but pacing a show, I think, was the most important.
You've worked and up on that stage with you throughout the years. Elvis, Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra. Are you ever in awe that that happened to you?
Oh, golly, yes. I wasn't in awe of Frank. I was definitely afraid of him at one point, but I wasn't in awe of him. Dean was so easy to be with. That Dean, you just became friends with Dean right off the bat. Sammy, I knew when Louis had the big band, we worked all of the black theaters back east. And we used to work the Apollo Theater a lot in Harlem. And Sammy was working with his uncle and his father.
The Will Masterson.
So I knew Sammy for many, many years before we ever hit Las Vegas. And of course, Elvis was a very nice young man. There was nothing to be in awe of him about.
Did you ever think, why me? How did I get thrown into this?
No, because I think God does everything. I am very close to God. I talk to him all the time. He's with me everywhere I go. And I truly believe he has a plan for you. He has one for me. He has one for whoever in this world. And it was his plan. And even today, if I'm not sure about something, I ask for guidance. I just tell him, give me, you know, let me make the right decisions.
Wow. Did you always feel that divine nudge, if you will, moving you along from the time you were
Sometimes on stage, if I would get upset over something or I'd get nervous, I'd just kind of look up there and just a calmness would come over me and I'd just continue. I've never questioned things. I still don't question them. I don't question why somebody like Britney Spears goes from this beautiful young thing to this whatever she is now. You know, I don't know why people did that with her, because she is absolutely a lovely young girl. I don't question why Diana Krall is the biggest thing in jazz in the world. I mean, I'm happy for them. I think it's great. I don't question what makes the grass green. And a lot of people I know do question everything. And I just figure I put my life in God's hands. And whatever he intends for me to do or be or go or say or whatever is going to happen.
You pray regularly?
Yes, I do.
You said, you told me something the other day, that when you were singing, you had a little frog in your throat.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that.
That happened just the other night. I've been fighting catching some kind of a bug, and I've been taking antibiotics. And I told him, I said, dear God, if you're going to let me get sick, please can it wait till Sunday? Don't let me get sick on Friday and Saturday, because I've got these 2 shows. But anyhow, on Saturday night, I guess I had gotten a little tired, and some phlegm came across my throat on the next to last song, closing. And I managed to get through that song, and the closing song is The House I Live In, coupled with a portion of the Star Spangled Banner. And The House I Live In, I got through it. It was, you know, coughing here and there and trying to clear it. For some strange reason, the minute I started singing the Star Spangled Banner, it cleared up like it had never been there, like a bell. Wow. And I finished the song the way I was supposed to be singing it, you know. So
When you were in the middle of this, it had to be an exciting time, but doing 5 and 6 shows a night, I'm sure you weren't aware that you were essentially creating the Lounge Act, as it would come to be known.
I wasn't aware. See, when we went into Vegas, Mary Kay Trio was the big lounge act in there, and they were wonderful. Mary Kay was a great singer, and we kind of took over their spot, so to speak. So no, I wasn't aware we were creating a lounge act. I didn't even know how big we were. I never realized that we were stars, you know.
Wow.
Because we did what we did. I was married, I had my children, we went to work, he got up and played golf, I stayed with the kids all day, and that was my life.
Your life. Compare that era to today, where we are.
Oh, there'll never be an era like that. Never, ever.
Why
ever
not?
again. The people are gone. There'll never be another Frank Sinatra. There'll never be another Nat King Cole. There'll probably never ever be another Elvis. I'm trying to think. Now, Shecky Green, thank God, is still alive, and he's still wonderful. Don Rickles is still alive and working. Yes, he is. And but it wasn't just the individual artist. It was the friendship that we had. If someone got sick, like I remember one time, Frank was supposed to open at the Sands, and we were opening the following night at the Sahara. And Jack Entrada at the Sands called Louis and said, could you please open tonight for Frank? He can't make the show. And we've got a full house. And Louis said, of course. Never thinking or never saying, well, golly, that might take something away from our own opening. Louis just said, babe, we're going to fill in for Frank tonight. I said, fine. So we went up there, and they put a sign at the door, Frank Sinatra will not be appearing tonight, but Louis Prima and Keely Smith will. And to give the people the chance to leave if they wanted to or get their money back. And you never looked for any pay or a gift or a thank you. You just did it because you were friends. That's gone. That's not in our business anymore.
What do you think about the moral and cultural climate of that time as compared to today? Do you think we're headed in the right direction today?
No, not at all. Are you kidding? No. I don't believe in free sex and the language they're using today, especially on records and on television. No, I'm dead set against all of that.
How did we get here?
I have no idea. You know, I sometimes have to laugh because I read things in the paper about school teachers being blamed for the kids doing this and the kids doing that. Well, heck, it begins at home. Those teachers can't do it alone. The parents have to discipline these children.
Do you think there's been a decrease on the emphasis on morality and personal morality and religious faith?
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons that I love George Bush so much. I think President Bush has brought back to the White House our dignity, our morality, our religion, and family. I really do.
And that's so needed now.
Yes, it is. Yes, our country needs the family to be together again.
I want to take you back again and talk about your solo career for a minute after Louis Prima. You work with Nelson Riddle and Billy May. I mean, some of the greatest arrangers, and those albums still are like the day they were cut. What memories do you have of working, particularly with Riddle?
Nelson was wonderful. Nelson was very quiet. And of course, I got Nelson because of Frank. And I don't know if you know the story or not about my contract with Capitol Records. They didn't want me at all. They wanted Louis in the group and me as part of the group, but they didn't want me. And Louis had told them, we'll sign with you, but you've got to give Keely her own individual contract. And they said, no, we don't want her. And Louis said, well, then you can't have the group. And they hemmed and hawed, and they came back in about 3 months, and they said, okay, we'll take her. And that's how I got my contract. And my first CD or album in those days was I Wish You Love, which was recorded with Nelson. You know. And I got Nelson because of Frank. Because everybody didn't get Nelson.
No, I noticed that. You, Nat King Cole, Judy Garland, and Sinatra. That was it.
Yeah.
What a group.
Yeah.
You said in an interview we did once before, God would lead me where I needed to go. Did you always feel that, even at that time?
Yeah, always. Oh, since I'm a kid, yeah.
Wow.
Since I'm very young.
What does Christmas mean to you personally this time of year?
Family. Definitely family. As a matter of fact, I never work in November and December. This year, I found myself working in both months, which is very unusual for me. And mainly because I love Christmas. People are nicer. I mean, the decorations all over the city and in the stores, they're just beautiful.
Yeah.
But for some reason, people are nicer to you on the street. They're nicer to you when they're driving their cars. They're more courteous. And it's just a wonderful, warm time of the year, and I like it.
Do you think we've lost the real meaning of Christmas with the emphasis on the buying and the selling and...
Well, yeah, but that's been always. That's since I was a child. That's been like that.
Really? You've
Yeah.
seen it decrease? I mean, you don't even hear the sacred songs anymore that we used to hear.
Well, maybe you don't, but I do.
Yeah, well, because you're playing your Christmas CD.
No, they play them on the radios down here. I think it probably depends on what part of the country you're in.
I want to talk about that voice of yours. Here are some reviews. New York Times from this year. Miss Smith's warm, molasses-textured voice is remarkably intact. Here's the Los Angeles Times. Her voice has lost none of its honeyed warmth and creamy luster. Here's one more. Her timeless tone intact, Smith can still caress a ballad and wail on a beat with a control eclipsing her younger peers. What is the secret to this voice?
Well,
You've got to work at it.
No, I don't. I truly don't. I've never had a lesson. If I'm going to go to work, I rehearse about 2 weeks ahead of time. If I'm going to record, I rehearse about a month ahead, learning the songs. But I've never abused it either. I've never smoked. I drank very little in my life. I've never been into drugs of any kind. And other than eating a lot of pasta, I eat very healthy, you know.
Well, maybe that's what keeps that voice intact.
I don't know.
Now, I hope I'm not breaking a confidence here. You are 74 years old.
Yes.
Voices like this don't come out of 74-year-old bodies. I've got to tell you
They do if God's leading them. And I don't mean to sound overly religious. You know, I just feel that He's with me all the time.
Okay.
But I truly believe it is a God-given thing because I didn't have to work at it. I've been very blessed with it. And like I said, I don't abuse it.
And you don't work it out. You don't do vocalises every day.
No.
You don't take lessons.
No.
Breath
And I
control?
can't read music.
Do you work out, exercise to keep the breath control?
No.
How do
No,
you
it's
maintain
just-
it? I mean, it really, I've got to tell you, I've been seeing you for about 15 years now live. It's frightening to me. You sound like you did in 1954.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with being happy, too. I really do. I lead a pretty normal life. I'm not your typical show business person.
What do you say to those who feel they're over the hill? And there's a lot of people. I mean, you're a pretty spunky number. And you're still recording, Grammy nominations.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Yeah.
you're still out there. What do you say to those people?
Get off your rear and go do it. I mean, I have a friend here in town, and I won't say his name, and I adore him, and he was one of the biggest, a part of one of the biggest acts in the world at one time. And he thinks he's over the hill. He thinks he can't sing anymore. And he is the sweetest, kindest man. And I tell him it's a muscle. That's all it is, it's a muscle. You let your muscles go in your entire body, everything's going to fall apart. You let your muscle go in your throat, you have to work at it. You've got to build the muscle back up, and you can sing.
Right, right. Gap ad hits in 1998. Kids are suddenly listening to Jump, Jive, and Wail, and Keely Smith is everywhere. What do you think drew them to that song and to you again? I mean, I go to your concerts. You've got kids in the
I know.
aisles.
Isn't that wonderful?
What is
Yeah.
drawing them?
The beat, the music. Louis had that shuffle rhythm, and I incorporate that in a lot of my music. And as you well know from singing the shows, I do a lot of Louis songs.
Right, right.
But I think it's the rhythm, and the people walk out of there happy. And I think that's the whole thing. When you do a Sinatra show and you end a concert with My Way, I mean, that's really a downer, but it's such a blockbuster of a song that you don't lose the people with it.
Right.
But when you walk out of there singing When the Saints Go Marching In, and you got the whole room singing with you, and people walk out happy and dancing, and that's really what I like.
Yeah, well, you can see it, and it exudes out into the streets. I mean,
Yeah.
after Feinstein's, the night I saw you at Feinstein's in New York, you know, you had people in walkers jumping up and down. I mean, it's amazing. How have you been able to survive where other groups that came out of the swing craze from like 1995 to the present, a lot of these groups have dropped off, and you're still here?
I don't know, I never thought of that.
Is there an authenticity? Do you think it's because you're the real deal?
Probably. Probably. And the fact that the voice is still there. You know.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's positive thinking, you know, the way I live, the way I think positive all the time. I refuse to think negative. And I'm interested in a lot of things. You know, I want to learn Spanish. I still don't have what do you call it, a computer.
You're going to get
I'm
one.
really behind time with that. But yeah, I am going to get a computer. I don't have time to learn to work one yet, so.
You've got a 5-record deal from Concord.
Yes.
You've done the Swing, Swing, Swing tribute to Louis Prima.
Right.
You've done the tribute to Sinatra. You now have a tribute to Count Basie. Keely
Correct.
Swing's Basie style. Talk to me about that. Why Count Basie?
Well, I worked with Basie. I was the first singer that took him into Basin Street East in 1963. That was way
Really?
ahead of Frank taking him into the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas.
Uh-huh.
And Bobby Milano, who is my record producer, thought that I should. Bobby believes bigger is better. I believe simple is better. Less is better to me. Bigger is better to him. And he said, you can't come along after the Sinatra CD with 40-some-odd musicians and do something with 8 or 9 guys, because I wanted to do a mood thing called In the Keely Mood and just sing some pretty songs. He said, Keely, I really don't think that's going to work. He said, you were close with Basie. Why don't you do a tribute to him? And I did like that idea.
Wow.
So I worked with Basie, like I said, in New York at Basin Street East, and I took him to Los Angeles, to the Coconut Grove in the Ambassador Hotel.
Right.
And then we did some armed services radio shows together.
I have that, yeah, I have that on CD.
It's terrible, isn't it?
Well, no, it is not terrible.
How do you like the hair on the cover?
Yeah, that's an old
that
picture. Where
picture?
did they find that picture? of
That's
you?
what I looked like when I left home with Louis. I had long
Wow.
hair.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a great recording, though, because it's live. I mean, it's pseudo live.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's a great pairing. This past October, you were awarded the highest honor granted by the Cherokee Nation. What did that mean to you?
A lot. And I think more so because even though I'm from the South, I was never raised with prejudice of any kind. And when I first left home with Louis, and I did my first newspaper interview, the man asked me what my nationality was, and I said English, Irish, and Indian. And he said, what kind of Indian? I said, Cherokee. And I was so proud of this interview, I sent a copy of it home to my mother, and she had a fit. She said, oh, why did you do this? I said, what, Mom? What are you talking about? Well, you don't ever admit that you're part Indian. I said, why not? She said, because you just don't. That's a no-no. That's a minority. I said to her, but I'm very proud. Now, my Indian part is not on my mother's side, naturally.
Ah, it's on your
It's on my
father's side.
father's side.
Okay.
My grandma was full-blooded Cherokee, and my grandfather was 3/4.
Wow.
And so anyhow, I told her, I said, well, I'm very proud of it, and I will always mention the fact that that's my heritage. And because of that, the Cherokee Nation came along and recognized me for being proud of the fact that I was part Cherokee.
Wow. Final question. This Christmas, what do you wish people, what do you wish the nation and the world?
Health. Health. I know everybody would probably say peace, but health. Because if you have your health, you can do anything.
All right. Keely Smith, thank you so much.
Thank
it's been
you.
a pleasure.
You're
and
cute,
Merry
Raymond.
Christmas. You're pretty
Merry
cute yourself.
Christmas to you, too.